Hi everyone, my name is Benjamin West, and today I'd like to share a few of my thoughts, specifically some life-changing decisions that I'm making and some things that maybe I could allow you guys to join me and some adventures that I'm going to be going on, but also about just to give you some past experiences that I've been through, why I'm making some life changes at this point in my life, and hopefully it'll be some ways to encourage others and let others know that when things don't always go your way, don't give up, keep looking forward, be positive, and just look for your plan B if your plan A fails. In the last 30 years, I've spent most of my career in aviation. I started in the United States Air Force in the 1990s. I always wanted to fly on airplanes. I started my career as a munition systems technician, where we built bombs with the B-52s and the B-1 aircraft in North Dakota and Abilene, Texas. I really wanted to fly, so I cross-trained from that. Halfway through my Air Force career, went into working on the AWACS, the E-3 Boeing 707 aircraft, the one with the radar dome on the top that looks like a UFO. I did that for a few years. I really enjoyed flying. I got over 1,000 hours flight time working in the back as a surveillance technician. But eventually I wanted to actually get back up into the flight deck, so I went into the reserves, served with the Hurricane Hunters, the C-130s that fly in the hurricanes that are on the Weather Channel all the time. And I went down with those guys for a while, finished my bachelor's degree, and wanted to be a navigator. But once I finished up my degree, I did my flight physical, and because I had had kidney stones, they were making a big deal about it. So even though I was an enlisted flyer, going from enlisted flyer to an officer was going to be problematic for me. So I had to leave the United States Air Force and the reserves after over a decade of serving my country. After I left the Air Force, I still wanted to fly, so I went to a helicopter school called Vortex Helicopters in Gulfport, Mississippi, and tried that for a while, for a few months. I received about 8 hours of flight training in the Robinson R-22 helicopter. That got really expensive, and at the time I was still trying to finish up my bachelor's degree, so I decided to switch from helicopters to airplanes. I went to the Ocean Springs Airport in Mississippi and started working on flight training on a Cessna 172. I almost finished up. I had over 50 hours. All I needed was my FA eval, but I had to quit because I was also working on my bachelor's degree and ready to graduate. So I postponed that evaluation, and to this day I regret that because I never went back to get my pilot license. So I guess I'm eternally a student pilot. I did finish my bachelor's degree in aviation, professional aeronautics with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and so I decided to go to Plan B. Plan A was to try to be a pilot or a navigator. Plan B was, since those two things failed in the Air Force and as a civilian, I decided to move forward with trying to do something else. So I decided airport management was the thing to do, because that's really what my degree focused on, was airport management. So I went out and tried to get operations jobs at several airports around the country, went to internships and all sorts of things, but for some reason I was having a hard time getting on, mostly because I was older. I was in my late 20s, and most of the airports wanted to hire younger people for internships and things, so I just wasn't having any luck getting on with an airport, which was really breaking my heart. So I decided to try commercial real estate for a while. So I did that for a few years and did really well in commercial real estate. I actually enjoyed commercial real estate. I worked with shopping centers and investors from all over the world. I got, sold $1 million properties, and it was a lot of fun. Made a lot of money, and it was fun until the market crashed in 2007, 2008. The market crashed. I started my own real estate company for a while, but after a year of not making any money, I had to turn my real estate license in and decided that, you know what, let's think about aviation again. So I went back to Embry-Riddle to work on my master's degree and get an aeronautical science degree focusing on airport operations with a graduate certificate in airport planning. So I also went to work at Embry-Riddle. I worked at the Keesler Air Force Base campus in Mississippi, and then went up to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and worked at the Army post there with their Embry-Riddle office while I finished up my graduate degree, which I finished that up in 2013-ish, 14-ish, and decided to start looking for a career in aviation again. Because I had been stationed in North Dakota back in the day, I had a friend that still lived in North Dakota, and there was an oil boom back in the 2000-ish, 2013, 14-ish. And because of that oil boom, there were lots and lots of jobs in North Dakota. I didn't think I ever wanted to live in North Dakota being a Southern boy, but I decided to look up there for jobs. I found an airport planner job with the state of North Dakota. and I had just graduated with my graduate certificate in airport planning. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring for airport planner. I got the position and started that position in 2014 as an airport planner. So finally was doing something I want to do, working with airports. I had there's over 89 airports in North Dakota. 8 of them are commercial service. I had half of those 48 airports under my belt, the 48 on the eastern side. So I was the airport planner for all those airports. And also 4 of those were commercial service airports. Some of the airports were just little airports with turf strips. Some of them were, smaller airports with just one runway. Some of them had turf runways and, a main runway. And some of them had concrete or asphalt main runways and crosswind runways. So a whole bunch of different size types of airports. Aviation was really good in North Dakota at that time because of the oil boom, and aviation's always been good in North Dakota. So I learned a lot. I got to work with the FAA, learned a lot about working with consultants and people like that. So I really enjoyed being an airport planner for the few years that I was there in North Dakota. So the biggest thing was that I was working with 48 airports, but I really wanted to focus on one airport. So something that happened while I was in North Dakota is I met someone named Jim Lawler. Jim Lawler was really big in the aviation community in North Dakota. He was the airport manager at the Mandan Regional Airport, which was a small airport outside of Bismarck on the west side in Mandan. But his little airport really took off. From the time that I got there in North Dakota to the time I left North Dakota in a few years, he grew that airport from, a few, 30, 40 based aircraft to over 100 based aircraft, which is a lot for a small airport. And he was really taking advantage of a lot of things that were going on. And I learned a lot from him. And he just really encouraged me with seeing what an airport can do, how an airport can go from a small airport to being a lot bigger in just a few years. And so I saw the equation from working in North Dakota of how you can, the state funding and working with the FAA to get funding, and how working with your local cities and all the people that are involved in that, legislators and things, how you can get support for your airport and grow your airport. So I was encouraged by that. So I took that with me, and that's really was my goal, was to do what Jim Lawler did at Mandan. Now, Jim had been at that airport for over 30 years. He has recently passed away. The airport's actually called Lawler Field now. So I'm really glad they named after Jim, because he was there for over 30 years, and what a great honor for him. So, blessings to his family, and we'll miss Jim. And I know a lot of people who knew Jim are going to miss him. But that really was my encouragement. So I decided to leave the Aeronautics Commission as an airport planner, and I was able to move just down the road a little bit, an hour and a half, to Dickinson, North Dakota, and I got a job as an airport rescue, aircraft rescue firefighter, an operations technician with the Dickinson Theodore Roosevelt Regional Airport. So finally, I'm at an airport working. I'm not an airport manager, but yet I'm actually working at an airport. I'm really enjoying it. Learned a lot about snow removal and rescue firefighting, and a lot of the grounds on with mowing and fixing light fixtures and things at the airport. So the small amount of time I was in Dickinson, North Dakota, I learned a lot. And so then I was ready to try my hat again at airport management. So I applied for some positions, and as luck would have it, an airport called me in 2018 in Pocatello, Idaho, and the Pocatello Regional Airport, the mayor called me and was interested in me applying for that position. So I did. I went out there to Idaho. It was a Part 139 commercial service airport. It wasn't a small airport, wasn't a large airport, but it was doing pretty good. They had airline service to Utah, Salt Lake City with SkyWest, so I was very excited. They actually liked what I had to say, proposed a business plan for that airport, so they hired me. And so I worked there for a small period of time. And I want to stop for a second and just talk about some of the people who helped me get to this point in my life. I told you it was really hard for me to get into airport management. It took a long time. I started soliciting airports in 2003, 2004, and I didn't actually get a job at an airport until 2017, and that wasn't even an airport manager job. So in the last segment, I was actually at a cemetery, and cemeteries are one of my favorite places. And one reason I was at the cemetery is because it represents something going away, but something new coming in its place. So that was kind of the whole point of this. This little segment's called Soulful Goodbyes and New Beginnings. So with that said, we were talking about people that had meaning to me, to help me become what I am today and helped me to become an airport manager. And while I was in North Dakota, one of those people was, we already discussed, was Jim Lawler there at the Mandan Regional Airport. Another person was my counter associate at the aeronautics. I was the Eastern airport planner, and he was hired at the same time as me, and he was the Western airport manager, and his name was Jared Wingo. Jared was from a FAA background, and so as an airport planner, I learned a lot from Jared. We became good friends. We went on a lot of airport inspections together, and everything we did at the aeronautics, we always worked on the projects together, and we did a lot, and we accomplished a lot for the airports there in North Dakota, the years we were there, the years I was there, and then the years afterwards. I know he continued to do that. So, Jared was a big impact on my life, and he still is today. He went on to work, after he left the aeronautics a few years later, he went on to work with a couple of consulting firms, and now he's with the FAA office in Helena, Montana, and we still talk, and I was just visiting with him 2 weeks ago up there in Montana. But I just want to say thank you to Jared for all that he did to lead me and guide me, and even today he still helps me out with questions I have on aviation and things like that. Another person that I wanted to thank that meant a lot to me, that was a great mentor as I moved into my position there at Pocatello Regional Airport as the airport manager, was the Idaho Falls Airport Director, Rick Cloutier. Rick was a big mentor to me. He got to the Idaho Falls Airport right before I got to Pocatello, and when I got there, we became friends, and we worked together a lot, had lunch. He gave me a lot of great insights. I wrote a strategic plan and shared it with him, and he gave me a lot of good comments on my strategic plan that I wrote for the Pocatello Regional Airport. So I really appreciated Rick and his mentorship as the first time I was an airport manager, and he gave me a lot of great insights into airlines. And by the way, today Rick's airport is just going crazy with all the airlines there in Idaho Falls, so kudos to him, and thank you, Rick. Another person that meant a lot to me that I met in Idaho was the then administrator with the Idaho Department of Transportation Aeronautics. His name was Mike Pape. Now, Mike had came to my airport, introduced himself, and actually I went up to Boise to visit him at his office multiple times, and he came to my airport multiple times, and we became pretty good friends. So I really appreciated all the help Mike had and the confidence he had in me as the airport manager there in Pocatello. And a lot of the ideas that I had, I brought from North Dakota, working with the aeronautics in North Dakota. I told Mike, he really appreciated those ideas. So Mike was a great friend, and he did a lot to encourage me at that position there in Pocatello. Another person that I'd like to thank is Steve Kiergaard. I met Steven in North Dakota. He was the airport manager at the Williston Airport in North Dakota during the oil boom, and that airport was just going just crazy stuff going on while Steven was there. But then he moved to the Coeur d'Alene Airport in Washington. The Coeur d'Alene Airport at the border of Washington and Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And he worked at that airport as the airport director. And I visited with him a lot. Also, during my time as an airport manager, Steven gave me a lot of encouragement and a lot of ideas. So I really want to thank Steven Kiergaard. He's also moved on from airport management, and I think he's working with a consultant now too. But I think a lot of us had the same issues with working with airports. But I just really appreciated Steven and want to thank him also. So like I said, we were talking about my first airport manager job there at Pocatello Regional Airport in Idaho, and some of the great people I met, Mike Pape, Rick up at the Idaho Falls Airport, and then Steve Kiergaard up in northern Idaho at the Coeur d'Alene Airport. So I was there a short period of time at that airport. And then eventually we moved on to Washington State, and I moved to Ellensburg, Washington to be the airport manager at Bowers Field. I really enjoyed my time at Bowers Field. We started working on a strategic plan at that airport, which I really loved working with strategic plans. So it was great to get into that process of actually doing a big strategic plan, working with all the people involved in the airport. So while I was in Washington, there was a couple of people that really helped out. One of them was Samantha Peterson. She was my consultant with Century West. She was helping the airport do the strategic plan. So I really appreciated Samantha. We got to be friends, and she's a great person. And also, one of my mentors in Washington was her husband. Her husband was Rob Peterson, and he was the airport manager at the Yakima Airport, which was about an hour south of Ellensburg. So I spent some time with Rob, and I really appreciated Rob and all of his help. So those are just some other people who gave a lot of inspirations and helped me with my journey as an airport manager. So once I left my airport job there in Powers Field, I went to Missouri, back down south, and we moved to Warrensburg, Missouri with UCM, the University of Central Missouri. The university actually has an airport they own, and they use it for flight training. So I was the airport manager there for a while. Really enjoyed my time there, and we were working on a master plan for that airport, so that was kind of exciting. And then eventually I left that airport to go to the Midwest National Air Center, located near Liberty, Missouri, and I worked at that airport for a while, and that was the last airport that I was the airport manager at. So I also wanted to thank the Lee Summit airport manager, who has since retired, John Arazda. I met John a couple of years ago when I moved to Warrensburg, and talked to him while I was at the UCM airport and also at Midwest National. So he was a big inspiration, had a lot of guidance and things for me. So I wanted to thank John Arazda. He's since retired. And then one of the things that I tried to emulate is, like we talked about the Mandan Airport in North Dakota and how it grew. Another airport that really meant a lot to me was Brian Weller's airport. So Brian Weller is the airport manager at the Branson Springfield National Airport, which is a few hours south of here, and his airport's growing. So while I was the airport manager here in Missouri, I got to know Brian a little bit. We attended some conferences, and he also came out to UCM's airport to do a presentation. But with that said, all the things that he's doing down there, he's got a lot of great things going. His airport's really growing. So I really tried to emulate that at some of the airports there, and UCM's airport in Warrensburg, and also at Midwest National. But I just ran into a lot of pushback from the airport sponsors. Being an airport manager or working at airports was the most exciting thing to me. It's also the hardest thing I've ever done. It was the hardest job I've ever had to get. It's the hardest job trying to keep my airport manager jobs. But with that said, it was the most rewarding job that I've ever had. And I've really enjoyed all my times at all the airports that I've worked at, from North Dakota over to Idaho and Washington and then down into Missouri. Airports have sponsors, and the sponsors are the people who actually own the airports. Sponsors can be anyone from an airport authority, or they can be cities, counties, or even like UCM's airport in Warrensburg, the university actually owned the airport. So issues that I had as an airport manager, and I know other airport managers have too, is their sponsors. So it's never the FAA who gives most airports their funding, or even state aeronautics, where a lot of airports get funding from the states. Those are not, usually I had great relationships with the FAA and the states. It was always the sponsors who are the airport's worst enemy. And the reason that is because they never understood their airports, and they never wanted to take the time to understand their airports. They always said they wanted to understand their airports, and they always held the airport managers accountable for things at the airport without really giving the airport managers the time to understand that. Now, is that the case at every airport? No. Is that the case at most of my airports? Yes. So, the counties and cities and the university and the people that I've worked with, they didn't understand their airports. They didn't understand their funding, that the airports only survive because of federal funding. And when you sign a contract with the FAA to get federal funding, that means that you have to abide by federal regulations and provide support to the public to use those airports. Things that I ran into at all my airports were, this is a county airport. We don't care what the FAA says. This is our airport. We're going to do it the way we want it. We don't care about those regulations. Same thing at the university. This is the university's airport. We're going to do it this way. But the fact is, airports sign a contract with the federal government to provide to make the most out of those airports for the public, because the airports are paid for with public taxes, aviation taxes to be specifically, and because of that, the FAA expects those airports to support the public. And a lot of these airports, they try to minimize that by not opening up as many doors as they should for the public, which I was not a big fan of. So I ran into a lot of head-to-head with a lot of people because of that. Also with county commissioners or people in the counties or cities telling me to do things that were against our federal regulations. I would even call the FAA, get the FAA to send me a letter stating that the things they were asking me to do as the airport manager violated those trust and those federal grant assurances. But with that said, a lot of times they didn't care. They were always said, you just don't understand our county, or you just don't understand this. No, but I did understand airports. And I understand that most airports go by the same rules. Actually, they do go by the same rules for federal and state funding, and we have to abide by those rules. But as my supervisors or whoever those sponsors would be, were always asking me to do things that I just didn't feel right about. And so that's where I ran into a lot of issues. And I know a lot of other airport managers have the same issues. So it got to be frustrating. So because of all this stress, and even though airports are the love of my life, I decided at this point in my life, after 30 years of being in aviation and in the Air Force, that I'm going to try something else. It just wasn't worth the stress and the hassle and moving my family from airport to airport with not having a lot of success. And even though I tried to emulate with strategic planning and master plans some of the airports that I really appreciated, like the Springfield Branson Airport or even the Mandan Airport, I just fell short. So with that said, the reason that we're in the cemetery is to kind of show that I'm going from dying to that industry, and I'm going to try something new. Does that mean that I'll never go back to aviation? No, not at all. What that means is that I'm taking a break, a sabbatical, as you will. Never say never, famous words, Sean Connery, James Bond, never say never. But I might go back to aviation in the future. But right now I wanted to do something else. I wanted to do something that I wanted to help people, first of all. I didn't want to have all the conflicts that I have with governments working. A lot of my airports had governments and politics. So I really wanted to change that. So what I've decided to do is I went out and searched for, I looked at things that really make me happy. What makes me happy is mountains and adventures and things like that. So I Googled those things, and what popped up was a wilderness instructor or a field instructor going out and helping people understand how to survive in the mountains or on camping and adventures and hiking and backpacking and things like that. So I found out that there's a place out there where people get to do those things with their life, and I decided at this point in my life I'm going to try that. So I've hence become a wilderness instructor. I start my first duty in Idaho next week. I'm really excited about that. I'll be helping people learn how to survive and build fires and camp and backpack and mountain climb and things like that in the Idaho desert at 4,000 feet. So I'm really excited about that. I'll be spending a couple of weeks a month in Idaho, and then I'll come back to my family in Missouri. And the reason we're having this discussion today is because I've decided that since I'm going to be driving through the Northwest a lot, that I wanted to do a podcast about all of the things that I see along my journeys as I drive through, from Missouri on through Iowa, Nebraska, or even Kansas into Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Washington State, Montana. There's a lot of cool things that I see, a lot of national parks that I'm going to visit. And so I wanted to do a podcast and a video on YouTube channel that just shares those adventures with you, so that maybe not everyone gets to go out and see those things, or maybe you want to go do those things and maybe you need some ideas of what there is out there to see. So as I drive through, the Teton National Park, or even the Yellowstone, or the Rocky Mountain National Park, or even other parks there in southern Utah, I want to do a podcast on those things. Also some historical sites, specifically Sacagawea's grave in Wyoming at the Wind River Reservation, places like that. So we're going to talk about those things. We'll have some social commentary. I love spiritual stuff, or I guess paranormal stuff. So if we see any paranormal stuff along the way, we might talk about a little bit of that. And of course, my favorite's Bigfoot. Bigfoot's really big in Missouri and Washington and Idaho and places like that. So we'd like to talk to people about Bigfoot. So this is my new thing. I'm starting over for a while at this point in my life with a sabbatical. My new podcast is called Jam's Adventures. You can see it on Spotify podcast. You can see videos on the YouTube channel. We'll have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So also we have a website. So all of those avenues, you'll be able to keep up with the adventures. And I'd like to ask all of you guys, all my friends and out there that I've met over the years and networked with, from my airport buddies and airport managers to operations people, and even some of the consultants that I've worked with, FAA guys, state guys, I would like you guys to join me on this journey. I'd like you to go to my YouTube channel or my Spotify channel. If you guys would join or subscribe to those channels, watch some of the videos and like them if you like them. And I'd like to get some support. So, and let everyone know that this is a new direction, and that I want to use this opportunity to encourage people, to let people know that if things don't go your way, always have a plan B or a plan C, and things don't always work out. I started my career wanting to be a pilot, joined the Air Force. That fell apart. I wanted to fly. I did not get to fly, so I went into real estate and then airport management, and now as a wilderness instructor and podcaster. So things change, be able to move and just realize that sometimes things don't work out, but that's okay. Things don't work out, look for other alternatives and find something that you want to do. I encourage people to do what your heart says and find things that make you happy. So I want to share those things with you. If you'll look in the links below, you'll be able to see the website and some of the areas to be able to access Spotify and YouTube and all those other social media channels. So once again, my name is Benjamin West. I'm Jam, and this is Jam's Adventures, and I hope to see you guys as I'm out there traveling the United States and some other places. And thank you for joining us today and watching this video. Well, thanks for joining today, and once again, I hope that you guys will join us on our YouTube channel with our videos and also on our podcast on Spotify. And my name is Benjamin West, also known as Jam, and hope to see you guys with Jam's Adventures.